Alongside the introduction of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet came the introduction of a new in-game event, Tera Raids. These are fairly similar to Dynamax Raids from Sword and Shield. The key difference is that Tera Raids are timed. Instead of failing due to excess feigning in Dynamax Raids, you run out of time in Tera Raids. Not only are these raids timed, but a portion of that time is removed every single time you faint. Along with the time aspect, the Pokemon inside the Tera Raid have more unique typings and a magnitude more HP than your traditional Pokemon, making the raid trickier than the previous Dynamax raids were. With that being said, I thought it would be a cool idea to see if I have what it takes to beat every single type of Tera Raid in a single stream. As a challenge, I'm giving myself 90 minutes total to conquer all 18 Pokemon types. However, this wasn't the only caveat to this challenge. No challenge is complete without punishments. For this challenge, I decided that for each raid that I failed, I would eat a Bean Boozled jelly bean. For those unfamiliar with these, each jelly bean could be one flavor or another. They look identical but have far different flavors. From Tutti Frutti to rotten eggs and vomit, I implore all of you to give them a try for yourselves and see how bad they really are. On top of that, for however many types I didn't finish before the time was up, I ate another jelly bean. Now, in order to decide which raids I do, I spun a wheel that had all the types on it and ventured over to the closest Tera Raid of that type. I figured this would be the best way to make it as random as possible while keeping it fair in an attempt to give myself the best challenge. The challenge started off pretty smoothly. I wrote Bug on my wheel and made my way to the nearest Bug type Tera Raid that I could find. I scoffed at the mere 3-star Hatchram. I threw out my Meowscurator that had a type disadvantage against it just for fun. Looking back, I probably should have put a rule in place about not using level 100 Pokemon because, well, it took all of 30 seconds, and only because I missed my first play rough. But you know what to say, if it's not 100% accurate, it's 50% accurate, am I right? After that, the wheel decided that the Fairy type would be my next victim. Once again, I stumbled upon a 3-star raid. This time it was a Chansey, and while it didn't necessarily make it more interesting, the fact that Chansey tends to have a million more HP, which again is multiplied in these Tera raids, I thought it would make this battle last a little bit longer than it did. About 30 seconds longer, but still, 30 seconds is a long time depending on what we're talking about, right, gentlemen? Who among us hasn't popped early with someone who we cared deeply for, only to be left on red the next day? But it didn't though, because the Chansey was dead before I even got to select my second attack. Thanks, Salt Robot! This trend of just absolutely bullying raids unfortunately continued with the normal type Tera Raid, despite the fact that I went to a second one just in hopes of it not being another low star raid. I mean, technically it wasn't a 3-star raid, but between you and I, 4 stars are just as much of a cakewalk as the 3-star ones. Granted, the added annoyance of the shield could be of note, but it's just not at this point in the game for me. Following this, I spun the flying type on my wheel, and to be honest, I should have just gone to the 6-star flying raid that I had available, but it was still a little early in the challenge for me to know exactly how this challenge was going to play out. The raid closest to me was a 3-star Rufflet raid, but I was hopeful that the next closest would provide a little more oomph. However, I ended up just trading the Rufflet for Hippopotas since it was still just a 3-star raid. At this point, I was spending more time loading in and out of the raid than actually battling the raids themselves. Luckily for me, the next raid brought Ice-Q, an Ice-type Pokemon with a fighting Terra type. Its ability Ice Face only prolonged the inevitable just a little. This ability basically negates your first attack, kind of like Substitute, but without expending 25% of your health. Unfortunately for Ice-Q, it only prolonged it just a little bit before I sent the silly little penguin flying for the first time. To its grave. Bye bye, flightless bird. Hoping to add a little zing to this challenge, I made my way to an electric Tera Raid where I was faced with a Fortress, a decently tanky mon, but for once in my life, I was given an AI team that understood type advantages. After a few turns of all of us using non-stab ground moves, the Fortress went down, marking the successful completion of 1/3 of this challenge in just about 23 minutes, putting us on good pace to pass this challenge with electrifying speed. Get it? Electrifying speed? After spinning Psychic, we made our way over to yet another 4-star raid. This time we took on a Medicham, so at the very least, this one would have the added bonus for stab moves since Medicham is part Psychic. This excitement was short-lived, however, due to my completely overpowered shiny Azumarill. This was the Azumarill that I used for the Charizard event, so Medicham never stood a chance. While looking for the closest Fire Tera Raid, I realized that there was only one available in the entire region as it stood. Speaking of fire, how about you light that sub button on fire and heat up the comment section? Unfortunately, this raid did not pack any heat as it was only a 4-star Wug trio who got one shot by my Azumarill, who I've come to know as the Dragon Slayer. In the wake of the wannabe Doug trio's demise, we made our way to take on a Cloyster who had chosen to join the dark side of the Force. Unfortunately for Cloyster, all of the shell smashing and withdrawing on this earth could not save it from my Jedi Annihilate, who was destined to bring balance to the Force like his father before him. I mean, like her father before her. Sorry. At this point, we're officially halfway through the challenge and finally got a 5-star Tera Raid. Not only is this exciting as it is the most difficult raid yet, but we also have the chance to get some Herba Mystica, which is used to make sandwiches that boost our shiny odds, and as an avid shiny hunter, this is godsend. With this raid being grass, I brought out Death, my Cerulege, who makes quick work of even a 5-star Dragapult by burning it to the ground just like my childhood hopes and dreams. And guess what we got out of the raid? 2 Herba Mysticas, the best raid of the challenge, and it's not even close. With our first 5-star raid left smoldering behind us, I was hoping it would give momentum towards us getting more higher star raids, but it didn't happen. Instead, the only Dragon Tera Raid on the map was a 3-star Finizen raid, and while I liked that we got a true Dolphin Pokemon, it still just wasn't a match for my Meowscarada, who puts the monster in Pocket Monsters. On the way to the Ghost Tera Raid and in homage to the World Cup going on right now, I decided to play a little soccer with a giant olive just to feel something of a challenge during this. I chose to ignore the closest Ghost Tera Raid as it was only a 3-star Gibble, and I was hoping to get into one that had more stars. The next one did have more stars, granted not by much, so we went ahead and put this poor Torkoal to bed with Meowscarada. In Torkoal's defense though, it didn't get one shot, and was actually the first Pokemon to make me faint, even if my Life Orb did more damage to me than the Torkoal did, but hey, let's give credit where credit's due. Good job, Torkoal. Way to represent Gen 3. It even put up a good enough fight that the time almost ran out on the raid. Unfortunately for Torkoal though, almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, not Pokemon battles. While the Torkoal put up a bit of a fight, the same couldn't be said for the Steel-type Tera Raid waiting for me that housed a 3-star Gradient. My poor Cerulege only got to attack once in this raid. Sad day. This trend continued with a 3-star Zangoose raid, who was cosplaying as an Ice type. Once again, Death's Bitter Blade was too awful of a taste for this Zangoose to stomach. I don't know the rarity of difficulty for these raids, but I'm not gonna lie. Walking up to the ground Tera Raid only for it to be a 3-star Charcadet just didn't feel good. Charcadet taking a Flower Trick to the face from Meowscarada probably also didn't feel good, to be fair, so at least I'm handing out punishment for each time I'm punished as well. Zangoose got a chance at redemption for itself by being the mascot of the 4-star Water Tera Raid as well. And it kind of did, by not getting one shot by my Meowscarada. Barely. And I mean, we need a freaking magnifying glass to see the amount of health it had. But hey, we're not here to judge size. Now, something I forgot to mention along the way is that because I was feeling overly confident, I changed the rules so that any type I hadn't completed by the time there was 30 minutes left on the timer, I would eat one of the jelly beans. And with the timer passing 30 minutes with both poison and rock type left on the board, I was at 2 jelly beans owed at the end of this regardless of what happened with these next 2 raids. Fortunately for the jelly beans, who I'm sure if they had feelings would not want to be consumed, the rock type Tera Raid was a 3-star Gumshoes. Gumshoes, as you can probably guess by this point, got absolutely destroyed by a Flower Trick, an absolutely broken move from Meowscarada. Now, all that stood between me and only having to eat 2 of the potentially revolting jelly beans was a poison type Tera Raid, of which there was only 1 on the map, so I would have to deal with whatever level of difficulty this one was. Of course, it was only 4 stars. I mean, at this point, I can only be thankful that it wasn't a 3-star raid, so it wouldn't end with another 1-hit KO. By no means was this raid a challenge, but still, it wasn't an Elko. But with that, I completed the challenge that I set out on, and in an absolute killer amount of time, I might add. Unfortunately, though, I did make a deal that ended up with me eating 2 jelly beans, both of which were the good flavors because of course they were. I'm off to buy a lottery ticket. Bye.